Very warm welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching a new edition of the Daily Debate here on Nile TV International. I'm your host for tonight, Nancy Sarah Barakat. And tonight we're taking a closer look at President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi three-country tour. United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, as well as India, to bolster bilateral cooperation in various fields. Presidential spokesperson Ala Yusuf said the tour also aimed to discuss ways to confront the various risks facing the region, including terrorism and extremist ideologies. We're going to be taking a closer look at that tour that included those key countries and which also saw the president address and cooperate in the annual International Institute of Strategic Studies conference, the Manama Dialogue. But before we get to those stories, there are stories also making headlines here in Egypt, and we want to refer to, first of all, the speech that was made earlier today by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi during the 20th educational session held by the armed forces in the presence of the Minister of Defense and Military Production, Colonel General Sidqi Subhi, and the leaders of the armed forces. Sisi sent several messages through his speech to the Egyptian street with regards to his achievements during the last 17 months in office. He said he is in touch with the citizens' suffering, saying on ending this suffering and admitting that the prices have skyrocketed in the last period. He promised that prices will significantly decline by the end of this month. Sisi began his speech with a minute of silence for the victims of the Russian aeroplane that crashed in Sinai on Saturday. He said he expressed his condolences to Russian President Vladimir Putin and informed him that he approves the participation of the Russian authorities in the investigations into the causes of the incident. Well, for a bit more of an insight with regards to this particular speech by the President, we're being now joined over the phone by Dr. Sadiq, Professor of Political Sociology. Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome, my dear.
Let me start off by just asking you of your overall impressions of the President's speech.
Well, it was very important that the President talks to the people, but this special seminar, educational seminar at the armed forces, and he touched on many issues. He tried to present a list of the achievements that his government did in the last years, since he came to power. One is the gas electricity crisis, which, for many said that it would take years, and he was able to overcome this problem. As you remember, last year, the same time, you had many power cuts. We don't have that today. And so this is an achievement.
Right.
He also talks about, because it's a big issue, and the Egyptians are concerned about the situation, devaluing the Egyptian pound, the small projects, how to deal with unemployment and such issues, and this is very important. And he mentioned that he will, follow up the issue regarding the rising prices, and that the army and the government will address this issue soon, and that we are not forgetting the average Egyptian who is suffering from the inflation and economic problems. You also mentioned the media. The media is very important.
Right.
It's not only the person complaining about the media, but also the public opinion.
Mm-hmm. We
have seen, for example, as you know, the Egyptians today depend on private channels and social media for news.
Right.
And many of the private channels today are hungry for advertising. And to attract advertising, they began to invest in tabloids, yellow programs, yellow topics, even at the expense of, ethics. I mean, the ethics of media. We have seen the case of this famous mall girl, and how one channel showed her private photos and invaded her own privacy.
Right.
And, Egypt is suffering from sexual harassment.
Yes.
And the portrayal was blaming the victim again, which was really shocking. And that angered the public opinion and made a lot of people, even the social media made a campaign against advertisers and forced them to withdraw from financing the program. And so the president here is referring in general about the media, not only in such issues, but also even the parliamentary elections.
Right.
Look, I have in the parliament 448 independent seats and 120 seats for the left. Egyptian media, the last few months, only concentrated on the left, 120, and ignore the 448. Even government TV channels like Voice of the People and Nile News were supposed to be, informing the voters about the 448 seats and the candidates, and encourage people to go and vote. The fact that the new parliament is more, this is the strongest parliament in Egyptian history. It can impeach the president. It can sack ministers.
Right.
Previous parliaments did not have the same power. Had we had the same power, you would not have, had the revolution in 2011, because the parliament would have done its job, and if there is corruption, if there is any misbehaving, they would have acted. But because most of the legislatures in Egypt and the world are not doing their job, you had revolution. Revolution is a result that you don't have institutions that would call to account the executive. Now, we have a parliament that has the power and has the tools, and instead of getting a lot of high turnout, according to the official figures, it's 26.1% turnout, while in informal numbers talk about 15%. So the president is mentioning again the role of the media in development, in political development, in mobilizing and splicing people about the importance of such events and such activities. At any rate, the president tried to reach the people, and I think this may have an impact on the next round of the election that will come at the end of the month.
Well, we do certainly hope so, and we do hope that the speech has obviously eased some public fears and concerns. I thank you very much, Dr. Saeed Sadiq, Professor of Political Sociology, for your insights there. Another major story, ladies and gentlemen, that's making headlines, not only here in Egypt, but internationally as well, is yesterday's plane crash, which occurred in central Sinai and killed all 217 passengers and 7 crew members on board, with the reasons behind the crash yet to be determined. The Ministry of Aviation said the Airbus A321, operated by a little-known Russian airline, was flying from the Sinai Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh to St. Petersburg when it went down in the desolate mountainous area of central Sinai soon after daybreak. Let's take a look at the following reports.
A Russian airliner crashed in central Sinai Saturday, killing all 217 passengers and 7 crew members, with the reasons behind the crash yet to be determined. The plane, whose passengers were mainly Russian tourists, lost contact with radar less than half an hour after takeoff. It was flying at an altitude of 30,000 feet. An aviation team has retrieved the black boxes of the plane in order to determine the reason behind the crash of Airbus A321, which was heading from the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh to Russia's St. Petersburg. Civil Aviation Minister Hossein Kamel said at the press conference that communication between the Russian plane and air traffic control seemed completely prior to the crash, adding that the crew did not even send an SOS, and suddenly the plane disappeared off the radar. For his part, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi extended his deep condolences to Russia for the victims of the airliner that crashed in Sinai Peninsula. The presidency statement said that the president has been closely following the development of this tragic accident, adding that the president also ordered a quick investigation into the crash. In a phone call with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin, El-Sisi promised to create conditions for the widest possible participation of Russian specialists in the investigation into the cause of the crash. Egypt's general prosecution has agreed to cooperate with representatives of the Russian government while investigating the incident. Putin has expressed his deepest condolences to the families of the victims. He also declared Sunday, the 1st of November, National Day of Mourning. Earlier on Saturday, pilot Ayman al-Muqaddam, who is heading a government committee to determine the cause of the crash, said that the pilot sensed technical failure and reported to the air traffic controllers requesting to land at the nearest airport. Muqaddam added that the plane seems to have crashed during the attempt to shift directions in order to land at Al Arish Airport in North Sinai. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Sherif Ismail, along with other ministers, have headed to Sinai to monitor the latest situation regarding the Russian passenger plane. In a news conference, Ismail said that a team of experts from the Russian government and from the company which manufactured the plane arrived in Cairo on Saturday evening to join the investigation team. Ismail added that it was impossible to determine the cause of the Russian plane crash until the black box was examined, but that no irregular activities were believed to be behind it. The Premier also said that 129 dead bodies have been recovered so far from the crash site and transported to Zenhum Morgue in Cairo.
And ladies and gentlemen, that was a report about the investigations and about the crash that took place yesterday. Let's take a look at another report that we have for you. This time we're looking into President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's visit to the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain yesterday at the 11th annual Manama Dialogue Security Summit in Bahrain, rather on Friday. The speech by the president said he voiced his support for efforts in resolving the issue of the Syrian conflict at a global meeting in Vienna involving the United States, Russia and other regional and world powers considered a new plan on Friday to bring about a ceasefire in Syria within 4 to 6 months. He also touched on other regional issues of concern. Let's take a look at the following report and then we'll be back to welcome my guests here in the studio. Do stay tuned.
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi arrived in Cairo on Saturday after a 4-day tour to the UAE, India and Bahrain. His final stop of his tour of Asia was at Bahrain, where he met on Friday with Bahraini King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa. The meeting focused on bilateral relations, ways to advance cooperation between the two countries in various fields, and confirmed the importance of continuing the consultations and coordination between both countries. Arab regional and international developments were also reviewed in addition to topics of joint interest, and both sides emphasized the importance of consolidating Arab solidarity and achieving common Arab interests to address all forms of threats and challenges. Meanwhile, President Sisi participated in the opening of the annual International Institute for Strategic Studies, the ISS Manama Dialogue. During the Sisi discussed the situation in Libya, Syria, Palestine and Yemen, stressing the necessity of limiting conflicts due to their serious impact on the Middle East security. Al-Sisi also met with German Defense Minister Ursula von der Leyen in Manama on Saturday. The German minister praised Al-Sisi's last visit to Berlin in June and expressed Germany's wish to advance cooperation between Egypt in both the military and the economic fields. President El-Sisi's first stop was the UAE, where he met Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan to discuss the crises in the Middle East and possible solutions. During the meeting, the strategic partnership between Egypt and UAE was highlighted. Both parties confirmed its importance and the need for further partnerships. Regarding the Middle East crisis, discussed the Arab coalition support for the legitimate government in Yemen and its role regarding confronting the hostile situation in the country. They reviewed the coalition's efforts to secure Bab el-Mandeb Strait and promote the development of global trade. Furthermore, both sides discussed the recent developments in the Palestinian issue and how to protect the Palestinian people from Israeli attacks. In addition, they analyzed the and the UN efforts to find a peaceful way to end the conflict. El-Sisi also met with Crown Prince of Dubai Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum and discussed the importance of enhancing cooperation between Egypt in the United Arab Emirates in various aspects, including the economic and investment fields, to serve the interests of both states.
لأجيال قوية أحقق أمانيكي
بإيدي هبنيكي أجتهد لأعطيكي
أخضر أراضيك
محلاها عشت الفلاح مطمن قلبه مرتاح
أبهر العالم بيكي.
جميلة بكل ما فيكي.
بدمي أحميكي.
Welcome back, everyone. Allow me to welcome here in the studio Dr. Ameni Asfour, head of the COMESA Business Council. Thank you very much for coming in tonight. And also let me welcome Mr. Sherif, a political analyst. Thank you very much for your time. Ladies first, Dr. Ameni, let me start off by of your overall impressions of the President's tour and perhaps the most important outcomes of this three-country stopover.
Well, I think this visit has been very crucial, especially with actually India, which is the Africa-India Summit. It's really about the bilateral between Egypt and India. And just on a personal note, because I was attending the Africa-India Business Council and I have met with Prime Minister Modi, and he actually emphasized that His Excellency the President in New York in the General Assembly, and that he was waiting His Excellency to come and to see how actually India and Egypt have a very fruitful bilateral relations with reference to economic relations and of course many other things that was on the table. But it was really very crucial to have this because India is a very big country. And even with my meeting with His Excellency the Prime Minister, I emphasized that India could really invest in Egypt and support the Indian business community, because if they invest in Egypt and in other African countries, then they will have the privilege of also marketing their products and exporting it within the region of COMESA, which will be customs exempted. And it was really very much perceived by His Excellency the Prime Minister and the business community. Of course, His Excellency also the visit to United Arab Emirates and Bahrain was also very crucial with strengthening the bilateral relations. And we know now that in this time, really in the history of Egypt and the whole region, it is very important to strengthen these relations and be on the same agenda. In Bahrain and United Arab Emirates with our Gulf countries, and the relation with Egypt is very, very, very strong. So we really need to strengthen this and to see how can the whole region actually, with the support of Egypt and those countries, can come to an understanding with reference to the economic situation, with reference to the political situation and all the really what's happening in the whole region.
Right, we'll touch on in more detail later on in our discussion about these important points that you raised, Dr. Ameni. Mr. Sherif, again, let me ask you of your overall impressions. Three-country stopover, and as well, perhaps the most important outcomes from your perspective.
Well, actually, the international presence for Egypt needs to be strengthened all the time. So the visit to India was important, to Emirates was important, to Bahrain was important. Well, what I really kind of very uncomfortable with is the statement by the president that we will be able to protect even Bahrain. I mean, that's like overstating.
Right.
So it should be taken like more diplomatically, and he shouldn't actually give such statements right now, because that costs a lot.
Why do you find that worrisome? I mean, obviously part of GCC support comes from reassurance that Egypt will be backing any security threats to any GCC countries, with exception of
We
Qatar,
sound
obviously.
bigger than we really are.
Right.
To be honest, economically, we are lagging behind.
Right.
In terms of which countries are doing business better, are making it easy for investors to come around and do business in their countries. Singapore is number 1, New Zealand is number 2, the USA is number 7, Egypt is lagging behind, number 100 something.
Right.
So, I mean, before starting talking about Egypt as being a big power, we have to really...
But security-wise?
Security-wise, you cannot separate military power from economic power. The countries that are big enough are the countries who produce weapons, not the countries that actually import weapons and everything, and technology and everything. So even technology-wise, we are not that advanced. So I mean, you cannot show that you are going to support
you have the largest army in the region. You have the strongest army in the region.
In terms of number, yes, but in terms...
And you are increasingly, just for the sake of having a dialogue here and, you know, for and against the argument. You have a strong army in terms of numbers, and in terms also of know-how. You are increasingly arming yourself with high-tech weaponry to bring yourself up to par, and if not better than other armies in the region. This doesn't
make you a big country.
But this makes you a strong one, and if you're strong militarily, then you will be able to also provide security for yourself. And if you're able to secure yourself, surely you're going to be able to bring in investments and
that's perfectly right.
Right.
I'm talking about offering to help the Gulf countries.
Right.
I mean, the statement is like being overstated.
Right.
We shouldn't actually give these statements freely.
Right.
So it should be like very well measured. So you cannot just say it all the time.
Right.
You can say it once and stay for a while and then kind of use words.
But do you think Bahrain
sparingly.
is concerned about its security at present?
Course.
Right.
Yeah. They got the majority are Shia, the minority are Sunni, backed by Saudi Arabia, because they want to keep the Sunni ruling the country. So they got a kind of social trouble. They got also problems in freedom of speech and lots of other problems. So, I mean, these are not really that stable countries. They are apparently stable, but not really stable. So we don't have to really offer anything right now before we really get Egypt stable, because we are not yet completely stable.
Right.
We still have problems in Sinai. We still have Libya is in chaos. So whether we are safe or not on the west bordered by Libya, we should also be careful, because we have lots of problems. We still have a problem regarding the River Nile with Ethiopia. It still has to be resolved.
So
in
you're
a way
saying
that's
let's tackle our internal problems before offering security?
Before offering that excessively big words, I mean, we really have to be more careful about that.
Okay, but don't you think also, I mean, obviously, let's take a look at the speech that the President made at the Manama Dialogue. He pointed out, perhaps also, that military means by themselves, or military might or force, isn't the only way to resolving regional crises.
Yeah, this is politically correct, of course.
Right.
Of course.
So that's as well, I guess, balancing.
No, strengthening
out
Egypt militarily is crucial.
Right.
So they really have to think twice before they mess with us.
Right.
So otherwise, it would be easy for them to like crash in, like what happened in Syria. So the main problem in Syria was that Syria is a weak country, not because it's fair or unfair, but it's really about power as well.
Right. Well, let me just switch over to the economic perspective of things. Obviously, when in the UAE, there was also talk about improving economic and investment cooperation. What areas do you think can be enhanced?
Well, actually, I believe that economic is really linked with political, actually. In order to have foreign direct investments, we really need to have stability, and I think now it is very timely to attract investments from the UAE or Bahrain, and I might really have a comment on
Sure.
which means that all of the GCC countries, actually, Egypt is considered actually the brother of, or the leader of all the Arab countries, and it's on solidarity that the president is really offering such thing, because if Egypt doesn't stand with all the countries in the Gulf, then there will not be this strengthening of the tie. So it's really a win-win situation.
Right.
If we are going to really attract investments from Bahrain or United Arab Emirates, we need to have an enabling environment for investments. We need to really give some incentives. And it is very important that we stress really on manufacturing and industries, not only on real estates, because what happens is that many investors come, they invest in real estates, and they don't really add value much to the country. What we really need is really investment in infrastructure, energy, agribusiness, in manufacturing, in all. There is a lot actually of opportunities for investments in Egypt that could really benefit not only Egypt, but also it's a profitable, because as I mentioned, you can also export. Egypt could be the hub, and then you can export to other countries within the region. Also the new Suez Canal, also this is very important.
Yes.
The zone there
and
all,
yes,
definitely, because there is a lot of areas of opportunities there that could really work on developing the whole area and investing actually in the whole area. And
has India expressed an interest in investing in the new Suez
Well,
Canal
actually,
area?
during our, before the summit of the Health, we had our Africa-India Business Council, where I am sitting on the board, and we really came to a discussion that we need to have 5 working groups. These working groups will stress on things that would really benefit win-win situation. We will have infrastructure and energy. We will have actually pharmaceutical and health, agriculture and agribusiness, which is a very important, skills development. So what I really ask the business community in India is that it is not for Africa as a whole, that they cannot come just and take resources as natural resources and export it to India and then manufacture it in India. But what we were seeking for as African Business Council is about how they come and they invest in manufacturing, invest actually in industries, and value addition for the raw materials of Africa. Also agriculture. Agriculture was a huge thing, because 60% of all the arable land is in Africa, and they are very big potential of investment. So add value actually to our agriculture and agribusiness. Also transfer of technology and science and technology, because it is very important. They have technology, but how really can we as in Africa benefit from it? So the whole understanding actually with the recommendations that we came to as Africa-India Business Council that preceded the summits is that we have to strengthen these 5 areas of working groups. We have to have more meetings with the business community, because the business community there is really eager to invest. And we had, I asked them that if we would really, as Egypt, be happy to see how we can have a lot of investments from India. And even I was asked by the Prime Minister about the cotton. I mean, he said, I know that Egyptian cotton is the best. It's white and the long fabric. I tell him yes, and we are really looking forward that the government of India support the whole business community.
Since you mentioned cotton, and obviously it has a fantastic reputation on an international level, are we looking to expand on that? Are we looking to increase our production of cotton? Because it is
strategic crop. Actually, as I mentioned, we have talked about several investments in different areas and opportunities. But what I was asked by the Prime Minister, especially about the Egyptian cotton, but within the whole business community, we came to an understanding that they will make a visit to Egypt, and then I think also there was another meeting with bilateral between Egyptian and Indian Business Council, but I was sitting on the Africa-India Business Council, which is a holistic approach, because at Sherif Comesa Business Council, the 19 countries involved, we were very much interested to see how we can, India can invest. I asked the Prime Minister to that. He, as a government of India, should support the business community to come and invest in Africa in different sectors. Also, one of the things actually was the pharmaceuticals, because here we have a lot of pharmaceutical industries. We have 125 pharmaceutical industries. And it is really not exported to the whole of COMESA countries. So we really need to see how we can promote this with the countries, and that if they come to invest in Egypt, for instance, it will be very, very easy for them to export to the 19 countries customs free.
Well, Mr. Sherif, if I come back to you for a little bit of a political side of things, and perhaps also ask you about the that went on in Bahrain and the UAE with regards to the crisis in Palestine, Libya, Syria and Yemen. Obviously, again, during his speech, the president said that Egypt was looking to be involved and help solve the problems in all these 4 countries. What role can Egypt play in solving, or meeting at least, with the parties involved?
Realistically, we can't. In Palestine, Israelis will not give up anything unless they have incentives. The incentive can only come from either you force them to sit on the table by military power, and they think the Palestinians are not capable of doing that. The second, and that's my suggestion, that the Gulf countries, because they are very powerful financially, so they have to pressurize the USA so that they can pressurize Israel, and then the Gulf countries will give them incentives so that they can sit on the table and negotiate. So this is the only power in the Arab world nowadays. But Egypt is not powerful enough to affect any situation. They might mediate, attend meetings.
But let's say with the situation in Syria, for example.
In Syria also we are not powerful. We have
it's not about power, it's about having a neutral ground with all parties. Egypt has been very neutral with
Russia pushed us to attend the meeting in with the 17 countries. We really don't have a role in that. The roles played are by Saudi Arabia and Qatar and the USA, and that's the team against Bashar. And then Bashar, Iran, Hezbollah, and Russia.
So surely in that mix, you need a middle who's neutral towards
we
either
are
side.
being pressurized by our stand. That's really the stand that united Syria, and that's the really stand of Egyptian foreign policy, which is very good. And then the pressure by Saudi Arabia and Qatar so that they can Bashar, as if the problem is Bashar. And the problem is not Bashar at all, because in Syria the situation is much more complicated. They got the Kurds, they got the Christian, they got the Alawis, they support Bashar. They got the Sunnis, some of them support Bashar, some of them don't support Bashar. They got in Golan Heights, and in Golan Heights the main population is Druze, and they support Israel. Because Druze, part of their beliefs, that they support the ruler, whoever the ruler is. So I mean, the situation is much more complicated. Your political weight comes from your economic weight. We don't have a real economic weight so that can support economic power. So only powerful countries dictate the situation. We can play a role, but marginal one. So if we're honest about that, things would be clear to everybody, and then we can go on.
Well, let me
just little bit, it's because it's a daily debate. Let me just say that I really a little bit disagree with the issue of the weight of Egypt, because Egypt is really crucial for the region. And Egypt has a big weight. It's not about economic, it's about actually the strength of Egypt within the region as the biggest country, as a strong army, as the real player in the whole region. I think Egypt has a big role to play, even if it's not economically as the biggest one. even if it's not economically the bigger one, you know, but we have the real stability. This is the balance of the whole region.
Well, if you just compare between primary education in Egypt, Egypt lies as number 139 country.
Yes,
so that creates a very
yes, but you're
weak
talking about
country.
you're talking about internal problems.
Nancy, these are the people of the country,
Right.
the human power, the one that forms the power of the country. If the people are not that powerful, then the country is not powerful. If we confess that we are weak,
it's really
we'll be strong.
debatable. I mean,
Sorry,
you're
I
looking,
cannot I cannot really confess that we are weak. If you are weak, you wouldn't have been here now. You would have been fallen like other countries which did already fall. So actually, Iraq is not stable. Syria is no, but that's what the whole
if
issue.
If we're going to be saying that Egypt is not a is not a strong country,
for the time being,
is one that is weak. We have come a long way. We have come a long way since the Mubarak era, since the Morsi era. We have come a long way in terms of relations in the region and in international scale as
actually
well.
are based on the weight of the economy and education and technology and infrastructure and the ability to attract investors.
But we can look at other countries you know, countries that aren't, perhaps you're saying, oh, it's a weak country with a weak population, but that's not necessarily the situation of a lot of growing.
I'm not being unfair about it. I'm being honest about it so that we can.
I think you're being unfair. I'm going to take a quick break with the following report and another look at President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's visit to India, where he met with his Indian counterpart, Pranab Mukherjee, and attended the 3rd India-African Forum Summit. Let's take a look at that.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi called for bolstering India-African ties to help developing countries strengthen their position as he addressed African leaders at the 3rd India-Africa Forum Summit in New Delhi. During the address, al-Sisi affirmed the importance of building mutual ties with India in all fields as the Asian country, which boasts one of the fastest growing economies on the continent, seeks to expand its international reach as well as its economic presence in Africa. African leaders that Egypt seeks to reinforce consultation and coordination between the African and Indian sides to help developing countries achieve the position they earn. The President added that he hopes to achieve democracy of global ties, allowing developing countries to have equal standing in international decision, mainly in the Security Council, in which Egypt won a non-permanent seat for the 2016-2017 term. El-Sisi, who heads the United Nations Climate Change Committee of African leaders, urged that increased attention to be paid to the matter. President Sisi added that he aims to reach on climate change that suits the needs of Africa and developing nations as world leaders prepare to meet in Paris for a UN climate summit in December. He also emphasized the importance of fostering cooperation with India to combat the threat cross-border organized crime poses to security and stability in both regions. Before the summit, El-Sisi met with his Indian counterpart, as well as Indian Prime Minister and a number of Indian businessmen and senior officials. The meeting focused on possible investments in Egypt, especially the new development projects in areas around the Suez Canal, such as the planned industrial and logistics hub. For his part, Indian Prime Minister expressed appreciation to President El-Sisi's visit, calling it the foundation for a new era of partnership between India and Egypt. He also said that India is the 6th largest trading partner and 3rd largest export destination of Egypt, and both countries have a history of working together for peace and development in the world. El-Sisi's visit to India marks his first visit to the country since he was in June 2014.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and continuing on with our debate. Dr. Amani, obviously, India has a huge experience in economic growth. It's one of the economies in the world. How do you think Egypt can benefit from that experience? Especially, I understand also when it comes to small and medium-sized businesses, India has made huge strides in that area and in promoting that particular sector.
Well, let us really say that small SMEs, small and medium enterprises, are the backbone of any economy. And India have invested a lot in its small and medium enterprises. And there is a huge, huge industries in India, and it is exporting it all over the world.
Right.
So, and they have also invested in several issues. I mean, if you talk about IT, for instance, Bangalore by itself, it is really the whole issue of investing in IT. Textile and fashion, very, very, very important. Even tractors. I mean, one of the business personalities who was with us on the Business Council of Africa, India, he was the biggest tractor company all over India. It is very important to see how can we really make this strengthening of our economic relation based on manufacturing in our side in Egypt, and as we mentioned, in different sectors, and transferring of technology with reference also to the technology they have. And it's about South-South cooperation, actually. Although India now actually is from the BRICS countries, they have really invested in science and technology and small and medium enterprise. I think there is a lot actually to benefit and to learn from their strategy of empowering small and medium enterprises, which, as I mentioned, the backbone of the economy. And that's why here Egypt actually, they should really, there should be a plan with small and medium enterprises, which is cross-cutting. And there should be a high council for small and medium enterprises. I know the ministry is now called SMEs, but we need to have the enabling environment for SMEs. We need to invest in science and technology. That's why actually our COMESA Business Council and we are organizing a big congress, the African Congress for Science, Technology, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship in Egypt here in November. And it will really focus about scientific research and technology for industrialization, agribusiness, and support of SMEs, which is a very important topic that we will have some also many of the experts that should see how we really benefit from how India did, about also other countries did. How can the investment with scientific research and technology transform the whole economy? And of course, when you transform the whole economy, you really transform the whole social dimensions. Because if we talk about economic growth, and this is also one of the things that we stressed on, is that economic growth is not about increasing GDP without actually have an impact on the people. And that's also what I really, I was honored to give the vote of thanks on behalf of all the African delegation in front of all the ministers in India during the Africa-India Business Council. So in my talk with the vote of thanks, I stressed on that if we are talking about economic growth, it should have a social dimension, and it should have an impact on the daily life of the people, whether they are because of the youth unemployment, whether for the rural women who are in the villages who have no really basic needs. So any economic growth should really target the socio-economic transformation. And it was well received by everybody that if we have a win-win situation of strengthening our relations, so we should really invest in youth and women.
And Mr.
Just to add something about this, today President Sisi mentioned the start of 2,000 small workshops in Dumyat for furniture, and he said that they would start by the end of November. I think this is a small business as well, might actually promote the economy, and for the people of Dumyat, which is famous for furniture industry.
And what about your impressions, obviously, of the President's participation in the forum and also in the status of Egyptian-Indian relations at present?
Well, the political presence in international arenas always encourages and gives more confidence in the leadership of the country. So the more you present yourself, the more you talk, and the more you communicate, and then things get much clearer to the other leaderships around the world, and he gets to meet other leaders and to have side talks, which actually enable him to kind of clarify the situation in Egypt very well. Because if you don't actually get much presence around the world, then nobody will know what exactly you are doing, the improvements, where you stand in different political stands. All these things actually strengthen the political relationships that might actually promote business later on, because it all ends up in one, like they are all integrated, like business, economy, and politics. It's not like separate islands. They are all integrated in one basket.
And also, if I come back to you, Dr. Amani, to what extent do you think Egypt's participation in the IAFS can contribute to strengthening India's ties with Africa as a whole?
Well, actually, it is very important because actually, if I am talking about as a chair of Science and Technology Cluster of the African Union, ECOSOC, which is the Economic, Social, Cultural Council, the civil society component of the African Union, and how we are really promoting is about human resource and science technology, how to invest in human resources. To invest in human resources, we need to build the capacity of our youth. And if we're talking about Africa as a whole, more than 60% of Africa are less than 35, which is same of Egypt here. We have a lot of youth. Those youth has to be invested in building their capacity, in training them, in supporting them to start their own businesses in different sectors. So, as I mentioned, there should be a whole agenda. If we are talking about a win-win situation and our relation with India, we can draw a mapping exercise. What are the needs actually that we need in order to invest in our human resources and to invest in science and technology and to build this relation with reference to agriculture, agribusiness, energy, infrastructure, healthcare and drug industries. There is a lot, IT, there is a lot of opportunities actually and a lot of gaps. So what we need to see is what gaps do we have, how can we really leverage these gaps, how can we make a real strategy to empower our youth, our women, and empower our small and medium enterprises by enabling environment. One of the things actually that we are advocating for, and I personally talked to the heads of states during the COMESA summit, that we need special percentages of all government procurement goes to small and medium enterprises, including women and youth. And Kenya implemented this. Now Kenya, the president of Kenya, have now gave a law that 30% of all government procurement goes to SMEs, women, youth, and disabled. So you have to have an aggressive, actually, laws that market the small and medium enterprises and should be in the favor of the youth and women.
And I thank you very much for coming in, both of you. Dr. Amani Asfour, Chair of the COMESA Business Council. It was a pleasure having you with us, and it was a pleasure speaking to you as well, Mr. Sherif, the political analyst. Thank you very much for your time. And ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time we have for tonight's debate. Do join us again tomorrow, though, same time, same place. Here on Nile National. I'm Nancy Sarah Barakat, wishing you all a very good evening. Thank you very much.